Imagine stepping back thousands of years. You're entering a world that feels both familiar and just completely alien. A huge civilization, thriving, building cities, trading across vast distances, and then, well, seeming to vanish, leaving us with this profound mystery. Today on The Deep Dive, we're plunging right into one of history's really great puzzles, the Harappan Civilization.
That's right. And our mission today really is to sift through all the latest discoveries, the ongoing debates, try and understand how this ancient society lived, maybe what they believed.
And especially what new findings are challenging everything we thought we knew about their origins, for instance.
Exactly. We want to take you through some fascinating sites, some really astonishing facts. Think of this as your shortcut to getting properly informed about this incredible civilization. We're aiming to uncover the surprising moments that make you really rethink history.
Yeah, and we've got some great source material to draw on, archaeological reports, historical analyses. We're going to pull out the most important sort of nuggets of knowledge for you, guide you through the insights that matter. So let's get started.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're kicking off this deep dive by focusing on two sites that have been, well, really making waves recently in Harappan research, Rakhigarhi and Dholavira. Why these two? What makes them so crucial right now?
Well, both of them offer really unique insights, but maybe more importantly, they're challenging our kind of established understanding of the Harappan civilization. Rakhigarhi especially is causing a pretty significant rethink about their origins.
Okay.
While Dholavira just gives us these incredible clues about their ingenuity, their adaptability.
Okay, let's start with Rakhigarhi then, because you mentioned it challenges the origin story. For a long time, we sort of moved past the old ideas, right? Sumerian influence, Mesopotamian, maybe definitely the outdated Aryan origin theory.
Right, those are largely discarded now.
So the accepted idea became indigenous evolution, starting with early farming communities.
Exactly. The traditional understanding, it laid out roughly three phases. First, this pre-Harappan phase, way back, maybe 7,000 BCE. Small farming communities, like Mehrgarh out in Balochistan.
Right.
Then the early Harappan phase, say 4,000 down to 3,000 BCE. This is when the first cities start popping up, people moving into the lower Indus plain. Urbanization begins, but it's not uniform. Not yet. Different regions have different styles.
And then the mature phase, around 2600 BCE, that's the classic Harappan period we picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
That widespread uniformity, the bricks, the pottery, the city layout stretching over this massive area.
That's the one. But now, Rakhigarhi is really shaking that neat picture up.
How so?
Well, there's new data emerging from sites along the Gagarhakar River system. Some people think this might actually be the ancient Saraswati River mentioned in texts. And we're finding so many settlements on its banks. Rakhigarhi is a prime example. The evidence coming out suggests Rakhigarhi could be as old as, maybe even older than, the earliest settlements in the Indus Valley proper, potentially predating sites like Mohenjo-Daro.
Wow, okay. If that holds true, that completely reframes things, doesn't it? It suggests maybe multiple cradles of this civilization, not just this single path from Mehrgarh to the Indus.
Precisely. It's a rival narrative, potentially. And it's huge for understanding the sheer scale and complexity of ancient India's beginnings.
So what are the key things about Rakhigarhi that make it so significant for this whole debate? You said there were like 5 main points.
Yeah, roughly 5 big takeaways. First, just the sheer size. Rakhigarhi is now considered the largest Harappan site found so far. Bigger than Harappa, bigger than Mohenjo-Daro.
Really bigger.
Yep. It has 9 identified mounds, and honestly, much of it is still untouched, still unexcavated. Just think about that scale, a city bigger than what you previously thought was the biggest. What does that suggest to you about its importance, its role?
It must have been incredibly important, a major center. Wow. And the second point ties right back to the origins discussion.
Absolutely. Its potential age strengthens its role as a rival candidate for where the civilization really kicked off, challenging that standard Mehrgarh story. Understanding why this debate matters is key to grasping ancient India's trajectory.
Okay, and third?
Third, it seems Rakhigarhi was a major industrial hub, especially in its mature phase. Excavations have turned up evidence of a lapidary that's a bead-making workshop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and areas for working bone, maybe even some early ironworking, too. It suggests large-scale craft production.
Fascinating. From industry.
Yeah.
What about their spiritual life there? Anything unique at Rakhigarhi?
Well, this is interesting, too. There's evidence of fire altars and sacrificial pits. They found ash, animal bones. It strongly points towards fire worship, maybe ritual sacrifices. And this isn't unique to Rakhigarhi. Similar features are found at Kalibangan and Lithal, especially in the eastern Harappan zone. It suggests there wasn't just one monolithic Harappan religion, but likely a diversity of practices across this vast area. What does that tell you about trying to paint them all with one brush?
Yeah, it definitely complicates the picture. Makes it richer, though.
Yeah.
Okay, and the fifth significance, you mentioned DNA.
Yes, and this is potentially game-changing. Researchers from Deccan College and also a South Korean university have been analyzing DNA extracted from skeletons found at Rakhigarhi.
What are they finding?
Well, it's crucial for understanding population genetics. For instance, they've noted the absence of a specific genetic marker, R1A1, in these ancient skeletons.
Why is that important?
Because R1A1 is often associated with later Central Asian populations, its absence in these Harappan individuals significantly challenges older theories about large-scale migrations from Central Asia during the Harappan period. It suggests a much more indigenous population development.
Okay, that's huge.
And even more amazing, perhaps, is that they've used this DNA data to create artistic facial reconstructions.
Wow, you mean we could see what they might have looked like?
Sort of, yes. Imagine actually seeing the faces of people from 4,000, 4,500 years ago. How does that change your perspective? It just makes them feel so much more real, not just abstract figures in history.
It absolutely does. Wow. Okay, let's shift gears now to the other major site, Dolavira. What's its story? What unique insights does it offer?
Dolavira is just fascinating. It's one of the sort of top 5 major Harappan cities, but its location is key. Its topography has changed a lot over the millennia. Back then, it was probably much closer to the sea and also near that Gagar-Hakra river system we mentioned.
And it had some really unique features, I understand, different from other Harappan cities.
Oh, definitely. First off, its layout. Most Harappan cities you see have 2 main parts, a citadel and a lower town. Dolavira uniquely has 3 distinct parts.
3 parts, okay.
Yeah. And get this, it seems to have had pedestrian-only streets. Think about that. Ancient urban planning that includes pedestrian zones.
Yeah.
It's almost like a precursor to modern ideas. How advanced does that feel for, over 4,000 years ago?
That's incredible. Really sophisticated planning. What else stood out at Dolavira?
Well, there's the famous signboard. Found above a gateway, it has 10 large signs or symbols. It's unique.
A signboard. What does that suggest?
It strongly suggests a level of widespread literacy, or at least symbolic communication understood by the public. It tells you something about their societal organization, their public messaging.
Okay.
But maybe the most astonishing thing about Dolavira, the thing it's really famous for, is its water management.
Right, because it's in a very arid region, isn't it, Kutch?
Exactly. It's in the Rann of Kutch, a dry area.
Yeah.
And the nearby rivers weren't perennial. They only flowed during the monsoon season. So survival depended entirely on capturing that rainwater.
So how did they do it?
They engineered these incredibly ingenious water harvesting and conservation systems. Huge reservoirs, massive tanks built across the city, designed to store enough monsoon water to last the entire year. They had channels diverting water from the rivers when they flowed. It was masterful hydrological engineering.
Wow. Compare that to cities like Mohenjo-Daro on the Indus, which had water year-round.
Right. It shows incredible adaptation to a challenging environment. What can we learn today, facing our own water scarcity issues, from their foresight and ingenuity? It's quite profound.
It really is. A lesson in sustainability from the ancient past. And speaking of adapting to local conditions, their architecture was different too, wasn't it? Stone, not brick.
That's right. Dolavira is mostly built of stone, unlike the typical baked bricks you see elsewhere. Why? Probably a lack of sufficient wood in the region to fuel the kilns needed for mass-producing baked bricks.
So they adapted using stone, which must have been much harder work.
Oh, absolutely. Quarrying stone, transporting it, shaping it.
Yeah.
It's far more labor-intensive and costly than making bricks. It just highlights their resourcefulness again. They used what they had and mastered it.
So master planners, hydrologists, and stonemasons. Amazing. What about their beliefs? Did the burials at Dolavira tell us anything unusual?
The burials at Dolavira are another puzzle. They've found graves, some quite elaborate with stone cappings, goods inside, but often no human skeletons.
No skeletons. What's the theory there?
Well, there are several ideas floating around. Maybe they practice cremation, and these are symbolic burials for the ashes, or perhaps they were memorials for people who died elsewhere, maybe lost at sea, since Dolavira was likely coastal, or just symbolic burials representing something else entirely. It's a real mystery. What does that lack of bodies make you wonder about their views on death and the afterlife?
It's deeply mysterious. So many possibilities. Yeah. And finally, one really cool thing about Dolavira is this connection to the present day.
Yes. This is a beautiful example of continuity. Archaeologists found circular house foundations at Dolavira called bunga locally, and these are identical in plan to the traditional circular houses still built and lived in by people in the Kutch region today.
Wow, identical.
Identical layout. There's even a famous photo in some textbooks showing modern women in traditional Kutch attire standing right at the Dolavira site. It suggests this incredible cultural thread stretching across millennia. It makes you think what other traditions, maybe less visible ones, might have survived from so long ago. How deep do these roots actually go?
That's a powerful connection, linking us right back to their world. Okay, so we've looked at the breakthroughs at Rakhigarhi and Dolavira. Let's zoom out now and try to piece together the bigger picture of Harappan life itself, which, as you said, is tough with the undeciphered script.
It is. We have to be upfront about that. We're relying heavily on archaeology on the things they left behind. And that often leaves us with more questions than solid answers, especially when we get to things like politics.
Right. So let's tackle that great unknown first, their political structure. What's so puzzling about how the Harappans governed themselves?
The most striking thing is what's missing. Compared to Egypt or Mesopotamia from the same time, there are no enormous pyramids, no obvious royal palaces, no grand temples dominating the skyline. There's also surprisingly little evidence for widespread warfare or a powerful warrior class. City walls existed, yes, but many seem designed more for flood control than defense against armies. It just doesn't look like contemporary militaristic states.
So how did such a huge, organized civilization function without those obvious symbols of power or military might? That's the puzzle.
That's the core puzzle. It makes you wonder, did they organize power differently? Was it less centralized, less based on coercion? This absence really forces us to ask, what did their power structure look like?
It definitely suggests something different from the pharaohs or Mesopotamian kings. So if we don't see kings or generals, what are the theories about who was running things?
Well, older ideas, like a single, unified Harappan empire stretching across that vast area, that's generally seen as impractical for the technology of the time.
Right.
The opposite idea, that there was no state at all, also doesn't really fit the evidence. The sheer standardization, bricks, weights, measures, city planning across hundreds of sites implies some kind of coordinating authority or shared system.
So somewhere in between.
The most plausible current thinking is that it was likely a collection of city-states, maybe regional clusters of power. As for who ruled these city-states, the leading theory, though it's still very much speculation, points towards a priestly class. Perhaps priest kings.
Like in Mesopotamia.
Exactly. There are parallels drawn with Mesopotamia where priest kings were common, and that famous little steatite sculpture, the one often called the priest king with the trefoil pattern robe, that lends some visual support to the idea. But again, we're inferring heavily here.
Okay, so maybe spiritual authority held more sway than military might. Fascinating how much we just don't know for sure about their government. But when we turn to their economy, the picture seems much clearer, much richer in detail.
Oh, absolutely. Their economic life is where the archaeology really shines. We see incredible sophistication from mastering agriculture to intricate crafts and really extensive trade networks.
It sounds like a powerhouse economy for its time. How can we break that down?
We can think about it in three main parts. First, the foundation, their agriculture. Second, their really impressive art and craft production, almost an industrial setup. And third, their far-reaching trade, both internal and external.
Okay, let's start with farming. How advanced were they? What were they growing?
They were clearly masters of agriculture. They produced enough surplus food to support large cities, which is no small feat, and they adapted their farming to different environments, floodplains near the Indus, more arid regions elsewhere.
What were the main crops?
The staples were things like wheat and barley, also lentils, mustard, sesame, actually. Sesame oil seems to have been a major export, mentioned in Mesopotamian texts. Rice was grown too, but maybe played a secondary role compared to wheat and barley.
And I heard something about a late Harappan Green Revolution. That sounds really intriguing. What was that?
It is intriguing. What happened is, in the later phase of the civilization, two new crops suddenly appear in the archaeological record. Jowar and bajra, types of millet.
Okay, and where did they come from?
They were originally domesticated in Africa, so their appearance tells us two really important things. One, it implies active trade connections somehow with Africa.
Wow.
And two, perhaps more importantly, it shows intelligent adaptation. Jowar and bajra are very drought-resistant crops. As the climate seems to have become drier in the later Harappan period, adopting these crops would have been a smart strategy for survival, a kind of ancient green revolution driven by necessity.
That's an amazing example of resilience. Did they leave behind any specific food items, like Harappan snacks?
Actually, yes. This is a fun one. At a site in Rajasthan called 4MSR, archaeologists found these ancient balls, basically lattice.
No way. Lattice.
Yes. When they analyzed them, they found grains, seeds, proteins, basically ancient energy balls. It gives you a little taste of their food culture.
That's brilliant. What about their farming techniques? Were they just basic or more advanced?
Oh, definitely advanced for their time. We know they practiced crop rotation using both the Kharif, summer monsoon, and Rabi, winter growing seasons. We don't have surviving wooden plows, obviously, but we have finds like a terracotta toy plow from Banawali.
Oh, toy plow, okay.
And even better, at Kalibangan, they found actual plow marks preserved under later layers. And these marks showed a crisscross pattern.
Crisscross, what does that mean?
It means they were practicing double cropping, planting two different crops in the same field at the same time. That's a really sophisticated technique to maximize yield. We also know they used animal manure as fertilizer. Evidence comes from bins of animal dung found in villages.
So, highly developed adaptive agriculture. What about their diet overall? Was it just grains?
Not at all. They had a very diverse diet. They hunted wild animals, they fished, and they practiced animal husbandry, raising cattle, sheep, goats, so they ate meat alongside their crops.
And this led to good health.
Apparently so. Skeletal studies consistently show that Harappans were generally quite healthy, with good teeth, indicating a varied and nutritious diet. There's an estimate that about 1/6 of the population lived past 55 years old.
That sounds surprisingly high for that era.
It is. Compare that to life expectancy in many parts of India. Even in, say, 1947, it was significantly better in Harappan times. What does that longevity suggest to you about their overall quality of life? It suggests it's a pretty successful society.
Truly remarkable. Okay, moving from the farm to the workshop.
Yeah.
Their craft industries. You called it an industrial setup.
Yeah, I think that description fits. We see clear evidence of mass production of standardized goods. Think about those uniform bricks found across thousands of kilometers. Or the standardized weights and measures, little cubicle weights made of chert, incredibly precise, used for trade. Some have even been found as far away as Oman.
Wow.
And beyond standardization, we see specialization. Specific sites seem to have focused on particular crafts, like Nageshwar and Balakot in Gujarat were centers for shellworking, making bangles and inlay. Lothal had a dedicated bead factory complex. It implies a high level of organization, skilled artisans, maybe guilds, very much like an ancient industrial complex.
Okay, so what were some of the standout crafts? I heard something about India's ancient Made in India brand, starting with them.
That would be cotton textiles. They were pioneers in cotton cultivation and weaving. It was a major export. Mesopotamian cuneiform texts actually mention importing cotton textiles. They called it vegetable wool from Meluha, which most scholars agree refers to the Harappan region.
So they were known for their cotton way back then.
Absolutely. Even centuries later, ancient Greeks and Egyptians wrote about the quality and especially the lasting color like indigo dye of Indian cloth. Their reputation for textiles goes way, way back.
Amazing. What about metalwork? Bronze Age, right?
Yes, they had advanced bronze technology. Bronze is an alloy, copper mixed with tin, which makes it harder and better for tools and casting. We find beautiful bronze objects. The most famous, of course, is the dancing girl figurine from Mohenjo-daro.
Ah, yes, the dancing girl. And she was made using a special technique.
She was made using the Sire Perdue or lost wax method. It's a sophisticated casting technique where you make a wax model, encase it in clay, melt the wax out, and pour in molten metal.
And that technique,
Yeah.
it didn't just disappear, did it?
Not at all. This is incredible continuity. The lost wax method continued to be used in India for millennia. You see it in the famous Chola bronze statues like the Nataraja from centuries later, and it's still used today by tribal artisans making Dokra metal craft. It's a direct technological link back 4,500 years.
That's just mind-blowing. Such an enduring legacy. Okay, what about stonework? You mentioned Olviri used stone, but was it common elsewhere?
Stonework, especially statues or elaborate pieces, was generally quite rare and probably prestigious. Good quality stone often had to be imported, maybe from the Rory Hills in Sindh or elsewhere. Transporting it and carving it was difficult and expensive. So finding stone artifacts usually implies high status.
Makes sense. And then there are those bead ornaments. You call them the iPhone of that era.
Laughs slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but they were definitely high status, highly desired luxury items. They made truly fabulous bead necklaces, belts, pendants. The materials were often imported semi-precious stones, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from Gujarat, turquoise, agate, jasper.
And they were hard to make.
Incredibly difficult. Think about drilling a tiny hole through a hard stone like agate or carnelian, using only drills tipped with even harder stone, like maybe ernstite. It required immense skill and patience. Polishing them took ages, too. It's estimated a complex necklace with hundreds of tiny beads could take a master craftsman maybe a year to produce.
A whole year for one necklace.
Possibly. So these weren't everyday items. They were status symbols, markers of wealth, and elite connections, and they were highly sought after outside the Harappan zone, too. We find Harappan beads in royal tombs in Mesopotamia and even Egypt. They were a major export success.
And isn't there a sad story about one famous necklace related to partition?
Yes, a very poignant story. A particularly spectacular long carnelian bead necklace found at Mohenjo-Daro when India and Pakistan were partitioned in 1947, and the artifacts from sites like Mohenjo-Daro were being divided. This necklace was physically cut in half. Half went to India, half to Pakistan, and they've never been reunited. It really speaks to the symbolic power and value attached to these ancient objects.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. Okay, moving on to another iconic Harappan object. The seals. What were they actually for?
Primarily, they were tools for trade and administration. Think of them like ancient company logos or official stamps. They weren't currency, not coins. They were usually made of a soft stone called steatite, which was easy to carve and then fired to harden it.
And the carving was special.
Yes, it's called intaglio carving. The design is cut into the surface in reverse, so when you press the seal onto wet clay, maybe sealing a jar or a package of goods or a document, it leaves a raised impression of the design in any script. It was a way of marking ownership, guaranteeing contents, or authorizing transactions.
And the images on them. Mostly animals.
Overwhelmingly animals, yes. The most common image, by far, is that mythical creature we call the unicorn, a bull-like animal with a single long horn. Its meaning is lost to us, but its prevalence suggests it was hugely important in their mythology or symbolism.
A unicorn.
Other animals appear to bulls, especially humped bulls, elephants, tigers, rhinoceroses, crocodiles, antelopes. But interestingly, two animals are conspicuously absent or extremely rare on the seals: cows and horses. That absence is actually quite significant, especially when comparing Harappans to later Vedic cultures where cows and horses were central. Why do you think they focused so much on animals, even mythical ones, on these important objects?
Maybe representing clans or deities or trade guilds. It's hard to say without the script. And then there was terracotta. More everyday stuff.
Exactly. Terracotta baked clay was used for more common items, what you might call popular art. Lots of figurines of humans, especially females, often called mother goddesses, and animals, plus toys like little carts, whistles, marbles, dice. We even found a terracotta dog with a collar. Suggests they kept pets.
Harappan pets.
Okay.
So we have agriculture, amazing crafts. Let's talk trade. How far did their network reach?
It was incredibly extensive. There was obviously a lot of internal trade within the vast Harappan zone itself, moving raw materials and finished goods around. But their external trade was also remarkable, especially with Mesopotamia.
Mesopotamia. How do we know?
Mesopotamian cuneiform texts from around that period talk about trade with foreign lands. They mention Dilmun, which is probably modern Bahrain in the Persian Gulf, likely a trading intermediary. They mention Mehrgarh, probably Oman, where Harappan pottery and weights have been found. And crucially, they mention Meluha.
And Meluha is the Harappan Civilization.
That's the scholarly consensus, yes. The texts list goods coming from Meluha, like timber, copper, gold, ivory, carnelian beads, pearls, and even peacocks, and goods going to Meluha, though fewer are listed.
So what were the Harappans importing and exporting?
They seem to have imported things like silver, which isn't common locally, maybe tin for bronze, some precious stones, and bitumen, that natural tar used for waterproofing things like the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro. Their exports, as mentioned, included cotton textiles, those fabulous beads, timber, ivory, maybe spices, sesame oil, and exotic animals like peacocks.
It sounds like they might have been exporting more valuable stuff than they were importing.
That's a strong possibility. They likely had what we'd call a favorable balance of trade. exporting high-value finished goods in exchange for raw materials or specific luxuries. This seems to be a historical trend for the Indian subcontinent for much of its history, actually.
Interesting. How do they transport all these goods? Boats? Carts?
Both. We see depictions of boats on seals and pottery. They look like reed boats, maybe plank-built, suitable for rivers and coastal travel. Interestingly, they don't seem to show masts or sails, suggesting maybe they weren't doing long-distance deep-sea voyages themselves, but relied on coastal routes or intermediaries like Dillman. And fascinatingly, the design of some boats depicted back then looks remarkably similar to boats still used in the lower Indus region of Sindh today. Another thread of continuity. For land transport, we have those terracotta toy carts with solid wheels, indicating they used bullock carts.
It paints a picture of a really bustling, interconnected world. Okay, let's shift focus again to their social life. Beyond the economy, what can we piece together about how people lived, interacted? Was it a society with big class divides?
Well, like any complex society, there was certainly functional inequality. We see differences in house sizes, some large multi-room courtyard houses, others just small two-room dwellings. There was clearly a hierarchy of settlements, from huge cities down to small villages. So, yes, there were rich and poor.
But maybe not as extreme as elsewhere.
That seems to be the case. Compared to, say, Egypt, with its god-kings and pyramids built by masses of labor, the Harappan inequality appears less stark, less monumentalized. Even the grave goods found with skeletons are often surprisingly modest, even in richer burials. It suggests maybe they valued accumulation and display in this life more than burying wealth for the afterlife, perhaps a relatively flatter social pyramid than some contemporaries.
Okay. And what about social divisions like caste? Was there a caste system back then?
That's a really tricky question. We see clear evidence of craft specialization: potters, brickmakers, bead makers, metalworkers, seal carvers. People clearly had specific jobs. But does specialization automatically mean a hereditary, hierarchical caste jati system like we see later in India? There's no conclusive evidence for that in the Harappan period.
So no proof of caste.
No solid proof. A prominent historian did propose a theory based on settlement patterns years ago, but later retracted it, acknowledging the data wasn't strong enough. We also don't see clear evidence for large-scale slavery, unlike many other ancient societies. So how exactly their society was stratified beyond wealth differences? A lot of that remains unclear.
Okay, so the social structure is a bit hazy. But can we get a glimpse into their maybe lighter side? Daily life, amusements.
Yes, this is where it gets fun. We can see they enjoyed themselves. We found dice. Cubicle dice, remarkably similar to modern ones, though the numbering system was sometimes different, 1 opposite 2, 3 opposite 4, etc., not summing to 7.
They played dice games.
Seems like it. We've also found what look like boards for games, maybe precursors to chess or similar strategy games, and lots of marbles.
Marbles. And you mentioned pets earlier.
Yes, that terracotta dog with a collar is pretty convincing evidence they kept pets. There are also little toy cages found, maybe for birds or other small animals. It paints a picture of people having leisure time, enjoying games, maybe even taking their dogs for walks 4,000 years ago. They clearly had activities beyond just work and survival.
That really brings them to life. What about how they looked? Clothing, adornment.
This is interesting. Many of the terracotta figurines and even stone sculptures are shown with minimal or no clothing. This might be stylistic, or maybe clothing was often simple, perhaps just cotton loincloths or wraps. But despite the potentially simple clothes, their love for ornaments was anything but simple.
Ornaments, like jewelry.
Oh, yes. Both men and women seem to have worn a staggering variety of elaborate ornaments. Bangles were hugely popular, made of terracotta, shell, copper, bronze, faience, even gold and silver. Women often wore multiple bangles covering much of their arm, from wrist to shoulder sometimes.
Like we still see in parts of India today.
Exactly. Another amazing continuity. They also wore necklaces, fillets for the hair, earrings, nose studs, rings, anklets, made from beads of semi-precious stones, gold, silver, faience. Personal adornment was clearly very important.
Do they have cosmetics or grooming tools?
They did. We found small copper or bronze objects that were likely mirrors polished metal, as glass mirrors didn't exist yet. They had ivory combs, often double-sided with fine teeth on one side and coarser on the other. And quite significantly, they found slender rods made of antimony or similar materials, which were almost certainly used for applying kajal or kohl eyeliner.
Kajal. So they definitely used makeup.
Seems very likely. All this, the mirrors, combs, cajole sticks, the sheer amount and variety of jewelry, points to a society where people cared a lot about their appearance and personal grooming. You can almost imagine ancient beauty routines, maybe even salons.
It paints such a vivid picture. Okay, finally, let's tackle perhaps the most mysterious area, their religious beliefs. What can we say about what the Harappans worshipped or believed?
This is definitely one of the most enigmatic aspects, partly because of the script issue, and partly because the evidence itself is complex. First thing to stress is, given the sheer size of the Harappan world, over 1.3 million square kilometers, bigger than ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, it's highly unlikely there was just one uniform religion.
So probably diversity, different cults in different places.
That's the most sensible assumption. We should expect regional variations, different popular cults existing alongside whatever the main state or elite religion might have been.
And the biggest puzzle here, as we touched on earlier, is the lack of obvious temples.
Exactly. That's the elephant in the room. Unlike Mesopotamia with its ziggurats or Egypt with its massive temple complexes, we haven't found any large, definitively identified public temples in Harappan cities. It's a striking absence.
Why might that be? What are the theories?
Well, several possibilities. Maybe they built temples from wood, which simply haven't survived. Possible, but seems unlikely for such major structures. Maybe their public religion involved rituals in open spaces or temporary structures. Or maybe religion was primarily a domestic affair, practiced within the home.
Or the upper town itself was the religious center.
That's probably the most plausible hypothesis currently favored by many scholars, that the entire citadel or upper town area, which likely housed the ruling elite, priests, served as the main religious and administrative arena. Sites within it, like the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, which was almost certainly used for ritual bathing, would have been key components.
Okay, so if not temples, what evidence do we have for their deities or cults?
We have quite a lot of suggestive evidence. First, there are hundreds and hundreds of terracotta female figurines found across many sites. These are often interpreted as representing a mother goddess or a fertility cult.
A common theme in ancient societies.
Very common. Though we should be cautious about labeling every female figurine a mother goddess. Some might just be toys or votive offerings, but the sheer number suggests female divinity or fertility was important.
And then there's the famous Pashupati seal, the proto-Shiva.
Ah, yes, the seal discovered by John Marshall at Mohenjo-Daro. It shows a seated figure, possibly three-faced, wearing a horned headdress surrounded by animals. Elephant, tiger, rhino, buffalo, deer. Marshall famously identified this as a prototype of the later Hindu god Shiva, in his form as Pashupati, lord of beasts.
What was his reasoning?
He pointed to four key features. The figure is in a yogic posture, asana. He's surrounded by animals, Pashupati. He appears multi-faced and horned, aspects associated with Shiva. And he might be ithyphallic, erect phallus, linked to fertility and Shiva.
That sounds like a strong case. Is it generally accepted?
It's very influential, but also highly debated. While it clearly depicts some important deity or Brahmanic figure, and figures in yogic poses do appear elsewhere, like on copper tablets, definitively calling it Proto-Shiva is an interpretation, not a proven fact. Some scholars see different connections or argue it's too early to project later Hindu iconography back that far.
Okay, so a key piece of evidence, but open to interpretation. What about nature worship? Animals, plants?
There's very strong evidence for nature worship. Animals, as we saw in the seals, were clearly significant objects of veneration or symbolism. That mythical unicorn is the most common motif, its meaning lost, but clearly central. Bulls, especially humped bulls, were also very important. Elephants, tigers, rhinos, snakes, maybe suggesting early Naga Puja or snake worship, all appear.
And again, no cows or horses prominent on seals.
Crucially, no. That absence is a key marker distinguishing Harappan iconography from the later Vedic period. Plant worship is also evident, especially the peepal tree. It appears frequently on seals, sometimes with a deity emerging from it, sometimes with figures worshipping it or women watering it. This is a really clear line of continuity as the peepal tree remains sacred in India today.
That's a definite link.
Oh.
Any other symbols or practices that resonate later?
Well, the swastika symbol, often associated with auspiciousness in later Indian traditions, is found on Harappan seals. The evidence for yoga-like postures goes beyond just the Pashupati seal. A skeleton found at Balathal in Rajasthan was buried in what looks remarkably like a samadhi or meditative pose. Horned deities or figures also appear on pottery and seals. These all hint at spiritual practices and symbols with deep roots.
And finally, what about actual rituals? What do they do?
We have evidence for several types of rituals. Animal sacrifice seems quite certain, based on findings in sacrificial pits, layers of ash, charcoal, and animal bones, particularly found at sites like Kalabungan and Rakhigarhi in the east. There's even a controversial tablet depiction that some interpret as possibly showing a human sacrifice, though that's highly debated.
Okay.
We definitely have evidence for ritual bathing on a large scale, thanks to the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro. Its careful construction, the steps leading down, watertight lining. It strongly implies purification rituals involving water. And as mentioned earlier, the presence of fire altars at several sites points clearly to rituals involving fire worship, perhaps Agni Puja. So, sacrifice, purification, fire. These seem to have been key elements of their ritual life.
Wow. This has been an incredibly rich, deep dive into these Harappan mysteries. Just to recap for everyone listening, we've covered a huge amount today. We started by exploring the really dynamic new theories about Harappan origins, especially highlighting Rakhigarhi's challenge to the old narrative and its significance as possibly the largest site.
Then we looked at the sheer ingenuity on display at Dolavira, that unique three-part layout, the pedestrian streets, and especially their absolutely masterful water harvesting systems, a testament to their adaptation.
We dove deep into their sophisticated economy. We talked about their advanced agriculture, producing surpluses, using techniques like double cropping, and even having that fascinating late Harappan green revolution, adapting to climate change with African crops.
Right. And their incredible craft industries, the standardization, the specialization, producing everything from world-famous cotton textiles to intricate bronze statues using a lost wax method that still continues today. And of course, those highly coveted bead ornaments, the iPhones of that era, traded across the ancient world.
We touched on their social life, acknowledging the inequality but suggesting it was perhaps less extreme than elsewhere. The lack of clear evidence for caste, but clear signs of daily amusements like dice and pets, and their obvious love for elaborate personal ornaments and beautification.
And finally, we navigated the mysteries of their religious beliefs, the likelihood of diversity, that striking absence of grand public temples, the debates around the mother goddess figurines, and the Pashupati proto-Shiva seal, but also the clear evidence for nature worship, especially the people tree and rituals involving sacrifice, water, and fire.
It leaves you with so much to think about. For all these amazing discoveries, all these inferences we can make from archaeology, that undeciphered script just hangs there, doesn't it?
It really does. It's the biggest missing piece. We can see their cities, touch their pottery, analyze their bones, but we still can't directly hear their voices, read their thoughts, their stories, their myths, their laws, in their own words.
What might we finally learn if that script is ever cracked? And, thinking about all those threads of continuity, we mentioned the bunga houses, the bangles, the lost wax technique, the people worship, maybe even the dice games. How does that visible persistence highlight the incredibly deep ancient roots of civilization and culture on the subcontinent? It's quite profound.
The Harappan civilization was truly a marvel, complex and sophisticated. And the amazing thing is, there's undoubtedly still so much more buried, waiting to be discovered, waiting to add new pieces to the puzzle.
Absolutely. We really encourage you, our listeners, to keep exploring this fascinating civilization.